Welcome to the Goth Academy podcast. Hi everybody! Hello, Theo Ganji!
Hello, Gil. How are you, sir?
Oof, I'm very happy and very excited to talk about the new Amazon Prime TV show, The Boys.
The greatest superhero team the world's ever seen, the Seven.
I came in with very humble expectations. Actually, I didn't know even what to expect, but I was like, okay, a superhero, another superhero show. Okay, more the same. But no.
No,
No.
not the same.
This show does to superheroes what The Wire did to cop shows.
Wow, that's big. That's a big.
I'm not saying that it's the same quality as
I got you.
The
I'm
Wire.
with you. I'm with it. Yeah.
But it's just as if it's turning upside down everything that we know about superheroes. Also, one could say that it does to superhero shows what A Song of Ice and Fire and Game of Thrones did to the fantasy genre. As if you can't go back afterwards.
Whoa!
I'm invincible, stupid motherfuckers.
I'm the world's greatest superhero. I can do whatever the fuck I want.
It's like taking this fantasy world and injecting reality into it. How would these people with these supernatural abilities be like in real life? How society would look like in real life? How things would play out economically, politically, geopolitically, personally in their personal lives.
Right. If they were supervillains, kind of, because these guys are like, these guys are bad. These guys are some real
Okay.
pieces of work.
We're the Seven, Earth's most mighty motherfucker.
So don't you think that superheroes would maybe be a little bit supervillains if they were real?
It's an interesting question, right? I mean, I think my take was, and what I enjoyed about it was it felt like it was a sort of meta inversion of the superhero concept, which is basically they take the fantasy, as you so accurately put, the fantasy of the superhero is really a narrative around like a single just man. I was going to say person, but no, the original superheroes were pretty much men, right? A single just man being, embodying your fantasies about justice and right and wrong, and the strength behind that, right? Being kind of realized in the world. And what this show does is basically say, well, what if the superheroes that we've enshrined culturally are actually just the worst fucking people?
This is how you see it? I don't think that they're the worst. I'm thinking like, why necessarily do you have to be a good guy if you have superhuman abilities?
Right.
It's not, doesn't have to be this way. And from what we know about people with a lot of power and influence, also a lot of abilities, let's say like pro athletes, the fact that they're good in one thing doesn't mean that they'll be good in another thing. And also maybe pop stars, rock stars, just like fame also changes you.
Yeah.
So
even in this anti-superhero show, there's still the character of Starlight, who is essentially a decent person with superpowers, who is still plays the role of a conventional superhero against the villains of her medium. The villains of her narrative.
Yeah.
They don't necessarily be good or bad, right? That the powers.
Yeah.
I mean, like for the most part, there's a loss of idealism when there's a lot of fame and power and success. But a guy like LeBron seems like a genuinely decent guy, right? To me, a guy like
very much so.
Yeah, I mean, and he's had all of the things that could corrupt a superhero,
Right, but okay, you're
so
right. Maybe when he was younger, he was more douchey. That's
honestly,
that's
when
what
he was
said.
younger, he was worse. A lot of times, it's like they're more idealistic when they're younger, especially when they get into issues like power, politics, law enforcement, those kinds of roles. You go from kind of idealist to capable of things that are like unrecognizable to average citizens. When you're in that game for a while, it's like this concept is these guys are the worst, right? These guys, I mean, I'm not evil necessarily, but no, they're the worst. They just kill people and don't care. They kill regular people.
Okay,
and
so
just don't care.
let's go back a little bit for people who haven't watched the show. So The Boys follows a team of 4 misfits, aka The Boys. It's based on a comic book series. We're going to elaborate on that in a moment. And there's kind of like a Justice League / Avengers team superhero with all kinds of different superheroes with different powers. From what I heard, it's more Justice League, right?
Yeah.
Even though they have the Avengers. Okay, they have the Avengers Tower. And they are owned by a corporation, because how would Captain America feed himself and have money to do stuff? He needs to get paid. Who pays him? So in this world, it's the corporation that pays him and all the others. And obviously a corporation wants to make money, so they have to have a social media presence, brands. They have to stay true to their brands. They have to do all kinds of advertisements, and they have to, and this is like the whatever capitalist machine, they have to take care of the interests of the shareholders.
Right.
And as we know from the real world, what the phantom shareholders, what they want and their interests, very often or most times doesn't align with the best interests of society. And this directly contradicts the very idea of superheroes who are here to advance the interests of society as a whole.
Right. Yeah, I'm with it. And it's interesting. I'm not sure if you followed the recent news where it looked like Sony and Disney might split up.
Yeah.
And it's just interesting to think about what you just said, right? And in the real world, in this way, you have corporate interests kind of running in direct contradiction to our superheroes existing in the same narrative universe together, right? Which is what everybody wants, which is what a hero would do, is just make that happen. And then you got these guys who are sitting on the greatest success of, certainly of Sony's cinematic career, and squabbling over who. Yeah, right. The last Spider-Man movie, I think, outperformed Sony's best picture ever, which was some Bond film, I think. So Disney. Yeah, we're not going to defend Disney.
Exactly.
I'm not. I'm certainly not here to. But I think their proposal made some sense to say, like, all right, we've clearly overperformed, and right now you're using our talent, our guys, to make your movies. Let us finance it at least partially. It seems like a reasonable request, and they, in true sort of corporate, not understanding either the creative process or human beings fashion, had to, turn this sort of negotiation brinksmanship into, I guess that, the actors had to step in, whatever the creative types and the real humans involved in it, trying to right the ship. You got these two corporate forces. They're almost like these sort of needy, narcissistic robots, right? They just like must consume and take for the self at all costs, right? And it
does sound like the superheroes in The Boys.
It's a little bit, right? A little bit, except that they also have the sort of pleasure principle running and ruining their lives. Yeah, it was interesting. I really enjoyed the show. I enjoyed all the ways they took our superhero expectations and twisted them.
For example,
where you first sort of encounter them in the space of the main characters, where he's holding hands with his girlfriend.
If we move in together.
Wait, what? What? Wait, hey, what was that? What'd you just say?
Well, I mean, we can't keep, laying pipe at your dad's place, trying to be all quiet, staring up at that dumb Billy Joel.
Hey, don't you ever besmirch Billy. Robin!
And this guy, A-Train, right? Basically the Flash, this world's Flash, fastest man. Runs through her. She combusts, I guess. He's running so fast that her entire self explodes, and he's just standing there holding just her two hands and the nubs, right?
Yeah.
And the guy's like, I gotta keep running. I gotta keep moving.
He did very well. And you're like him. You're like, what the hell happened? She's got to come back. She's got to come back. It's not, And
they did a nice job, I thought, just in terms of the writing and the execution of that moment, that I was really into this couple. Like, it was very short, but then she fucking explodes, bro. And then I kind of got this world that we're in, and I was, along for the ride. And then you just have all these sort of creep out moments. You got the guy who can turn invisible, and all he does with his powers is just hang out in bathrooms and watch people pee and stuff.
Creep.
You got Aquaman is essentially a rapist. Like,
yeah. Wow. Start off just like, okay, so that was very, very current, right? That was like 2019 Me Too thing. So Starlight is like a young woman from Indiana or whatever it was, Kansas, I don't remember. She's coming into the big city, and he's welcoming her in, and immediately just starts masturbating while she's there. And he's like, "I'm the big shot here. If you want to stay, if you want to keep this job, then you have to make me happy." And she goes through with it. So that was reality check. This is what it's gonna be like. Okay, no holds barred. We're gonna go all in. It's gonna be gross. It's gonna be super real in that sense. So this is like your superhero, and obviously this is a callback to all the big celebrities that we think we know, and then we see that behind the scenes they're actually terrible people.
Total creeps.
But by the end of the show, of the season, you kind of learn to like other sides of him. So by the end, you're like, oh man, somebody else, another woman, treats him like a sexual object.
Right. Oh, that was so creepy. Oh my god. We should probably say spoilers or something at some point. But yeah, I mean,
okay.
I thought the most interesting piece about how the story developed was the character of Homelander. How many times you sort of thought you kind of got him, and then he turned out to be way more fucked up and terrible.
Yeah.
And I thought that was done really well. You know, as far as the currency, I definitely felt at times in some of the politics and even some of the social stuff that it felt like just a little. It definitely felt pre Me Too.
Okay, in what way?
In a post Me Too world, Starlight, becomes, well, in a way, she actually does wind up playing out, but she winds up turning Aquaman into, a social pariah and adding to her own kind of virtue and fame on account of it, right?
By tweeting about it, metaphorically.
Yeah, in a way. You're right, exactly. I feel like with the internet, there's some notions that we held very firmly in the beginning of the aughts, right? And this was, I think, published in 2006 as guys that work at comic books, of course, but that they, had always had a kind of anti-superhero edge to their work. I think part of the reason it feels really contemporary, especially socially in regards to superheroes, is the comic book world has been oversaturated in the concept of a superhero for a very long time. So they've had time to do lots of meta stuff with it, analysis, push it, like, let's take it literally, let's make them, let's make them celebrities, let's make them horrible, let's make them evil, let's make them has-beens and washed-ups, like with Alan Moore's, with The Watchmen, kind of introduced that idea of the sort of quasi-realistic superhero. They played with it a lot. So for it to now be produced on this scale from a company like Amazon to take a shot on a pretty obscure kind of cult comic from 2006, that was too anti-superhero for DC to run it. DC was really going to publish it, and then when they saw how nasty they went after the Justice League, they dropped it, and then it was picked up by some other publisher.
I think that the fact that it's coming out now on the back of the huge success of Marvel makes it even more relevant than it was in 2006.
Right. Yeah, no, I agree.
Because now you watch like these dozens of Marvel superhero movies, and you're like, okay, this is an interesting take. I feel that it's subversive in so many levels. So Homelander, he's like the head of the Justice League, is kind of like Superman, right?
Right. Yeah.
So what's the moniker for Superman? Truth and justice in the American way.
You got it.
That's the thing, right? So he has a flag instead of a cape. So I think that maybe, I don't know if it was this way in the books, but it had also kind of like Captain America vibes to me. He's just like the America. He's America. Maybe if Superman and Captain America is how America wants to see itself, righteous, for good, like powerful, but uses its power for good. So Homelander is maybe how someone else could see a different view of America.
Yeah.
That it's getting a little bit old, not as young as it used to be. Like you can see his wrinkles and stuff. So you can see that he was like more beautiful in his 20s, and he's just like addicted to power and to fame. There's a whole plot line where they want to get into the military and start to get in the war on terror. You can think about it like it's like using a drone. So by using drones, like it's hard sometimes to defend not sending drones or whatever bombing Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Why should I just send soldiers in there to die when I can make sure that no one on our side dies? And he's just like the drone that you send over there, and he kills everybody. He kills everybody, not just like the terrorist. He doesn't ask and investigate who the terrorist is. He goes in there, kills everybody. All the soldiers stay alive.
Right.
So that's like a compelling argument for this like hawkish kind of view, and also that we can see in our real world that it's like a snowball effect. You start out this way, but then you fall in love with this weapon, and then also it's hard to go back, and you have a lot of how do they call it? Victims, people who were at the wrong place, the wrong time. There's like a term for it. I forgot the term. Innocent bystanders. Bystanders who just were at the wrong place at the wrong time. A lot of what was going on there, they were lobbying politicians. That got me thinking of the Wachovia Accords in Avengers. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I thought that was really interesting. So, I mean, I was mentioning before that comic books had done some kind of meta stuff, and I think like the Civil War, Captain America Civil War film, that was based on, I think, a 2008 or so comic book. That it is very meta, right? Just the question of proposing in the real world what would be the legal status of these walking weapons of mass destruction, right? You have this Registration Act, and when you watch Captain America Civil War, Cap's argument, and a lot of people support this, right? A lot of people watched this movie, heard what Cap had to say about it, and were like, yeah, he's right, and Cap's basically like, hey, I can't let a government or an international governing body tell me when to use violence, because they have agendas, and agendas change. And right, the premise being, and it's like, and it's always striking to me that people are cool with that, but it also makes sense because the fantasy of the superhero movie is that it is a just man, right? That you are there on that premise, right? This is a just person, right? So, and that's how we most, I think, even relate to justice. We don't, and maybe rightly so, even though the way we as social, as our societies as a social construct rely on a justice system, the way we actually believe justice works is that a just person can enact a just result. A system is always going to be flawed, right?
I would say it's the other way around. A just person can produce unjust results because he's only human.
Right? No, I'm not saying that that's correct. I'm saying that that's our emotional, psychological default, right? And that's why we sort of buy into it's absolutely probably not correct. But when we buy into the superhero genre, that's the illusion that we're under, right? And we have a sense of righteousness on account of our superhero counterpart in these films, right? It grows out of, to the extent that it's an American idea, it grows very much out of the stories of the frontier, the old cowboys, right, who were in these lawless kinds of circumstances, and it was the one cowboy who was full of justice, right? There was no way that guy was a racist or a monster or a genocidal maniac, right? No way. The cowboy that and then that did roll into the private detective character, who was our sort of stand-in superhero kind of version of, he wasn't on the law side, he wasn't on the criminal side, he went and sort of sorted the things out as his own, according to his own law. And then I think, and that was 30s, 40s, and then when you then project America into this conflict in World War II, it very much solidifies that identity, right? It's like, here are all these, these wackos over here. We're just going to swagger in with our American sense of righteousness and justice and power.
And you succeed, and you become the heroes of the world, and then that maybe puts everything on steroids for like 50 years.
Right.
For 50 years.
And then the military-industrial complex is sort of... So in a way, right, this story coming right back to the military-industrial complex and sort of asking that question in the sense that if our notion of superheroes is sort of suspended, right, at that point of American righteousness, then the real question is, well, where are the superheroes and how do they fit into the military-industrial complex, which was very much a result of World War II and winning World War II.
And is a result of corporate America. And corporate America is in many. It's interesting. So like the villain, I would say, for like most of the season, is corporate America that has like no values, and it will, in one hand, celebrate women, and on the other hand, degrade women if that will get more clicks and likes and shares and stuff. Like they want to replace Starlight's costume to something more revealing, and they're not above blackmailing politicians to lobby themselves. So in that sense, you feel more aligned with Homelander, who obviously is a horrible person, but he was also emotionally tortured as a child. He became this way, and he does want to do good, like in general, like he's not out to just demolish things. But at the end, spoiler alert, he's the one that created the super villains. He's the one who did like the extra step that corporate America wouldn't do, like would be even more patriotic than him. He just created the incredible enemies. You could say that can be the Mujahideen in Afghanistan or whatever it was, to create the enemies that America will need in order to keep him in power.
Right.
So in that way, he became like worse than them. And then it turned again when you learn that the corporate America basically created him and lied to him. So it's like very multifaceted in that way, and you like change like your feelings about the characters as it goes along. It's manipulative, but in a good way. Like it grows organically, I feel.
Yeah, and then real spoilers. And then he kills the matriarchal figure, the mother figure of his character and the show to that point, in a really brutal fashion. Ooh, that was.
And her baby too, by the way. They didn't show it,
right?
But her baby was there when everything exploded, so her baby's also dead.
Yeah. One interesting difference from the book. I've read just some bits of the comic book, but I did happen to see that where they execute the scene. You remember the plane scene?
Wow, great scene!
What a scene, right?
All right, everyone, it's all over. It's all safe. You're all gonna be fine. Oh no! Come on now, you guys made it.
Yeah.
So it's a little different in the comic. I actually think I might prefer the TV version. But I think it shows you a little how the comic differs. In the comic, it's like they just totally botch it. Like all the superheroes are there, they just don't know what they're doing. Like they have these powers, but they don't know how to like save a plane that's going down. Or so I think they accidentally kill the terrorists like that, but they also accidentally kill all the pilots. Homelander is there with the other fastest. So there's like another character who wasn't, I don't think, on the show. He was like the fastest guy before A-Train, and he's like flying with him. And they're like, "How are you going to stop this plane from going down?" He's like, "Oh, I'll just, I'll knock the tail rudder somehow, and that'll make it change directions." I don't know. So Homelander flies through the tail rudder and literally breaks it off, and at the same time decapitates his friend who he was holding. So.
Oh no!
So the Flash before H gets decapitated by Homelander, and then the plane goes down. So it's like they're more. I don't know. It's more like they're sort of superpowered buffoons, amateurs, as opposed to like the way they presented it. Where in this one, where Homelander was.
No. No, what? So they can tell the world that we left the rest of them to fucking die?
Come on!
No, man. No, you stay back. All of you, stay back! You stay the fuck back, or I'll laser you, goddammit! I'll laser every fucking one of you!
You fucking pricks move! And I'll execute every motherfucking last one of you!
Just a sociopath, right? Just this, tried to save his plane.
He had good arguments. Like we don't agree with his arguments, but they were good arguments. We can't save. Like he tried to save everybody. Obviously, maybe you should have just left that for somebody else. But you were there. You tried your best. What can I do now? in the show. It's like, I can't save everybody, so I should save nobody, because otherwise that would be a problem.
I read that a little different. I thought that he just kind of like, it was just too much trouble to save people. Like he could have probably figured it out, but he was like, nah, it's probably better we use this as a way to go to war than bother with this. And then they blame it on becomes another thing that they blame on the terrorists. Yeah.
There's a lot of war and terror stuff. There's so Translucent, I thought he was just like the Patriot Act. Like he could be everywhere, see whatever you do. You don't know where he is. Spying on everybody.
It felt very George W. Bush presidency. And it also, at times, it definitely read like, this is what America looks like to people who aren't Americans. Are
you talking about anyone in particular?
The writer, yeah. He's, I think
he's not American?
No. No, and the main guy is, he was, I think, born in Northern Ireland. The parts that felt like, I was like, oh, this is like someone was watching the news about America. And because the whole Bible stuff, like I could see how if you like watch the news in George W. Bush presidency, you would be under the impression that these Bible thumpers had this incredible political influence, and like winning them was like this huge deal. And then what President, 45 has reminded us is these guys were always completely full of shit, right? They don't care about the Bible. They don't care, but these are not good Christians. It is a cultural thing. It is an us versus them thing. And if you're an admitted sexual predator who has, been divorced however many times, and you sidle up to them politically, they don't give a shit about their religion.
He could even reveal that he had gay sex a few times. They wouldn't care. They wouldn't care.
They don't care at all. And they never did. And that was why I was like, all these scenes where they're like, these big Christian organization, like if you win the Christian vote, then you're viable politically. Get the fuck out of here. In America, it was always a fiction. You know what I mean? So those parts, I was feeling like this feels pretty dated.
But what about the hero there who was also full of shit, like the main superhero there with the elastic hands, and then we found out that he has gay sex whenever he wants to, as he's preaching against. But that's also kind of dated.
Felt a little dated.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of those. Yeah, we've seen a lot of those.
And just like the name Homelander, that was that Department of Homeland Security was created in direct response to 9/11. So it's all of the one kind of notion that I feel has been undermined a bit by the internet is that there's this kind of monolith conspiracy of corporate power that can do something like take a person who's a wanton sociopath and murderer and make them seem like a hero to the public. When you have Instagram, when you have TMZ, you also have a public that gleefully takes down supposed heroes. And that, I'm not saying that it's some great social cure, but it feels like we're in a different social atmosphere now, where it's as appealing a pile-on to hate a public figure as it is to love a public figure.
Let's take a test case.
Sure.
So Brad Pitt. I love Brad Pitt. Great actor.
Great actor.
Looks like a great guy.
Seems like a good guy, right?
Like a good guy, fun guy, and he's like very American in all the good senses of the word. Uh-huh. But then you have all these things, I don't know how to call them, rumors or whatever, about what led to the breakup between him and his wife, and you hear about maybe physically abusive, emotionally abusive towards her, towards the kids, whatever, blah, 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 blah. Maybe it's all false, though it seems like it's not. So still now, he's doing the PR tours for the movie. And also, Quentin Tarantino has said some vile shit during his time about women, underage women, sex with underage women. And in his movies, I've been rewatching his movies. The N-word is more common in his movies than any other word in the dictionary. Yes, no, hello, everything. Just he uses it in a nonchalant. It's not like in a way that you reflect about society and say, people do
he
that.
He says it because it's fun.
Fucking guys are acting like a bunch of fucking niggers, man. You ever work with niggers, huh? Just like you two. Always saying they're gonna kill each other.
We might break you in, nice guy, bitch.
Ain't that a sad sight, Daddy? Man walks into prison, a white man walks out talking like a fucking You know what?
Why is it that every I know treats his woman like a piece of shit?
He has fun saying it.
Exactly.
And he was getting away with
Exactly.
it. Yeah.
Did you notice a sign out in the front of my house that said dead storage?
Jimmy, you know I ain't seen no shit.
Did you notice a sign in the front of my house that said dead storage?
No.
You know why you didn't see that sign?
Why?
Because it ain't there, because storing dead ain't my fucking business, that's why.
So we still choose to ignore this and just like.
But I don't agree with that. Though. I don't think we choose to ignore it. I think you'd have a hard time Googling any of those people and not seeing those stories that you just mentioned.
Like still we want to think of Brad Pitt as a good guy. Like I want to hang out with Brad Pitt. Why do I want to hang out with Brad Pitt if he did all these things to his children and his wife?
Well,
Why?
I also think you're taking too...
Like my wanting to meet him beats whatever, my values, let's say.
Right.
And the information that I know about him.
But you're taking two figures who became celebrities way before the internet was a thing. We want to talk about like internet celebrities and the kind of culture of life around it now, and it's very different. You can't get away with being, reclusive. They were protected in a lot of ways. I don't think you get that anymore. I think that everybody's a paparazzi. Everybody with a phone is going to film a guy having gay sex and post it on Live Leak or the like just those that part of it that they could just like keep a sex club in the middle of New York quiet. It felt very 2006. It was very pre-internet.
Yeah, you're right. Right, and pre-smartphones.
In every hand, yeah. Which, and I think it just gets more interesting, really, to take, because then what I think you would have, updating the idea, the concept a little bit, is first of all you'd have much more you'd have less of a sort of the Seven, the big corporate thing, and much more of like a guy like Homelander would just run that shit.
It's a new phenomenon in pro sports.
I think so.
In pro sports, like the last 3, 4, 5 years, it wasn't this way before. Now players you can demand a trade 2 years in advance.
Right.
Oh, this is so interesting because I had this joke by Chris Rock.
There are no wealthy black or brown people in America. We got some rich ones. We don't got no fucking wealth. People go, oh, what's the difference? Here's the difference. Shaq is rich. The white man that signs his check is wealthy.
But now it's changed. Now, okay, maybe Jeannie Buss has more money than LeBron. Jeannie Buss, the owners of the Lakers.
Right, of course.
But he's more powerful than her in many, many, many ways. Okay, that's very interesting. Go on.
Look, I would even add to that and say, politically, in the worst possible way, this is also true. A guy like Trump, let's face it, was never supposed to win anything. And I think this is the bit that this challenged and it turns on its head. This is the guy that went up against the Koch brothers and that whole that idea. We used to believe, and if you watch almost any TV show or movie or anything that was set in like that political atmosphere, it's always about the party bosses and their corporate alignment, and that's this no, they're always going to win. They're always going to win. Guess what? They fucking lost, and what we got was worse. Yeah. What we got was a fucking white supremacist nightmare who is literally, and now, because that's what I relate to now, I'm like, we were so naive to think that the corporations always got their way. But now, so I'm like, for example, I'm playing this video game where it's like you play teams against teams, right? And anytime you're online, you're so close to white supremacy in America now, it's terrifying. I've never seen anything like it. Really? So I'm playing, and it's just normal game. It's like, but it's online, it's against another team, and the other team is called the Hooded Knights. And this is just normal now. It's like the new cool thing to like figure out how to make a swastika as your fucking handle and shit. President Trump fuck making terrorists. He has made huge swaths of America into open white supremacists.
And possible terrorists also.
Casual, right, and potential terrorists. Casual, and this is so far beyond what we could have imagined 10 years ago.
So you think that is not played out in The Boys? Maybe the next season, maybe Homelander now will take care will take over shit because he killed the Big Mama.
Man, I don't know. I realize I just got far afield from the boys, and that may not be fair. May not be fair to the
okay,
boys.
so all good points. And as you were talking, I remembered something that friends of mine who are gamers here in Israel told me about what's going on online. And it might seem at first impression as like a both sides do it thing, but it's just the same side. They can be Christian or they can be Muslim. The same mentality. So I've been told several times that Israelis now who go play online cannot say that they are Israelis because a lot of times they will play with Muslims or Arabs or whatever players, and as soon as they find out that they are Israelis, they will kill them in their own team. And they're all talking like Yahud, Israel. and it wasn't this way a few years ago. That's what I've been told. So to bring it back to the superhero, so basically the power of one person in this day and age overpowers the power of the institutions. We can see it in America, we can see it in Israel, we can see it in Hungary, we can see it in Brazil, we can see it in Turkey. So now in Brazil, basically you have like one guy and the interests around him, and just the mere fact that he's there just can change the entire history of the human race. This is you can't even understand or fathom the implications.
Yeah.
The power of the individual person at the wrong place at the wrong time. Wow.
All clear, boys. Mission accomplished. God bless America.
Like, I think if you're really going back to pre-literate kind of times, the most famous people got called things like Thor and Odin, by later generations, and that sense of a superhuman that way predates obviously Marvel and DC is just that's part of why it speaks to us. But it is a scary idea when you really look at it because of how horrible people can be.
The Boys, you can say that it does capture the zeitgeist in the way that how the season goes. So you had all these corporations, all these oligarchs, whether they be in the US or in Brazil, because just like this is relevant what's going on now, and they were conspiring either openly or in hiding behind closed doors, not like in a crazy conspiracy sort of way, but just like contemplate, like thinking how can we get what we want without thinking of the consequences and not thinking ahead of like what are we creating. This is like climate change. I won't be able to breathe clean air. My kids won't be able to breathe clean air. Temperatures will go crazy. Because I have this next quarter and I think that I'm in charge. And the corporation, I don't remember the name of the corporation, that they think Wavcot, whatever, something like that. They think that they can harness the power of the superheroes, and they're pumping them up, and then he kills her. Because and this is like Trump killing all the Republican Party and saying Trump didn't come out of nowhere, right? He was created.
Or Trump killing Hillary, huh?
Oh yeah, oh my goodness. She's not as horrible as him. Okay, yeah.
Right. She's the matriarch that made you think that maybe things aren't so terrible, but she's really defending what is inherently terrible, kind of.
Because she's a woman, you just assume because it's different because she's a woman. How would superheroes how would their personal lives and love life, what would that be like? So like Starlight, she has to make herself be not as awesome as she is because it scares men. She's a person. She wants to fall in love. She can only fall in love with another 1%er, let's say, because this is a lot of like 99%, 1%. So, but what if she likes this just regular guy? Now it's a problem that she's so rich, and so here it's presented as being a superhero, but you can. She's richer, she's more influential, she's more successful, and he's just a guy.
The fame thing isn't really real, And don't forget, I'm also just a girl standing in front of a boy, asking him to love her.
That pressured her, and in that way, the real out-of-control superhero in our world right now is Zuckerberg and Facebook. there's this guy who can literally decide who wins elections if he wanted to, right? And there's this question about how do governments deal with a power that is this transnational. I don't know. I just feel like we all kind of just hope that Facebook is kind of a good guy in the same way we would just hope that Homelander is kind of a good guy, because if he wanted to be terrible, he could destroy everything.
Maybe he was a good guy to start off, but
right,
absolute power corrupts absolutely. So if you become a superhero, it's hard to be the same guy when you have so much fame, so much attention. On social media, you have to curate this brand, and then who you really are and your image become farther and farther apart. And basically, like they're like it's clearly this 1%, 99% thing. They're like, all of you're just like sacks of blood. We're the chosen ones.
Right.
We are incredible. So why wouldn't they be the way they are if they're still human, right? So maybe Superman is not human, but all the others are human and have human sensibilities.
But there's this interesting way that the Marvel stories revolve around this idea. You had this essentially just man at the helm of the cutting edge of military technology in a way that acted like a check on all of it. There's no Tony Stark-like figure in The Boys. The wealthy guy, the one who signs the checks, is the superhero in this case, right? That's kind of interesting because my Iron Man can never be bought. There's no truckload of money that could come up to him and offer him XYZ for, for some, country destroying technology.
But then you have to hope that he's a good guy.
You just have to hope he's a good guy.
If he does, he's a good guy. If he does the wrong thing, then
we're all fucked. We're all fucked.
We almost got fucked in the last Spider-Man movie when he left everything to Spider-Man without telling him what to do, and then he almost gave all the weapons to the bad guy.
A high school kid, right? A high school kid. He left it to a high school kid.
Come on.
Well,
give instructions at least. So it's interesting, like in some way, like this world that we're now moving into, we don't know how long it will stay this way, but just like of strong men everywhere, and just like cutting deals themselves and being above all the institutions. It's a little bit like going back to the 19th century where the Tsar and the king, they could sit together, decide whatever the fuck they want, and not have like the UN or whatever, all kinds of global or national institutions who put a check on their powers. I have one superhero left.
Yeah, who is it?
Mr. Bernie Sanders.
And if there is any person here thinks that I'm coming to you as some kind of savior, that I'm going to do it all myself, you're wrong.
Wow.
Also, he's very old, so there's not a lot of time for him to... he can't stay in power for 20 years. 4 years, that's it. He can solve everything.
Gotcha.
He can bring peace to the Middle East, Brother Bernie. He's the only one who can.
The only way that real change ever takes place is when millions of people stand up and fight back. That's what this campaign is about.
Theo.
Yo.
Let's wrap it up. I think The Boys is very interesting. I very much recommend it for everybody. Maybe I liked it more than you did. I liked it very, very, very much.
I very much recommend it. I would say not quite to everybody. If you don't like seeing bodies explode and stuff like that, then you probably wouldn't enjoy it that much. But I enjoyed it very much. I watched it I watched it in like a couple of days. Like I was really into it.
Yeah. If you watched any superhero movie, any of the Marvel movies, that's a really interesting twist and take and subversive take in many ways about the show. And I in our conversation, you brought up a lot of points that I hadn't thought about, so that was also cool.
I do my best.
So thank you everybody for tuning in. We'll see you all next time.
Thank you everybody.
Bye.